The manager humiliated him every day until he had a child with her boss. Ryan Taylor took a deep breath every morning before entering the majestic building of Taylor and Harrison Architecture in New York City's business district. His talent was undeniable, but his humble background made him a constant target for Karen Wilson, the project manager, who seemed to take pleasure in belittling him in front of everyone. It was during a crucial presentation for international investors that everything changed. Karen made a serious mistake that could cost the company millions. Ryan, who had memorized all the data by working unrecognized overtime, stepped in discreetly and saved the day. Among the impressed faces was Victoria Harrison, the elegant and powerful CEO, who watched the scene with renewed interest in the young employee. "Who is that young man?" Victoria asked her assistant, never taking her eyes off Ryan as he confidently explained the correct numbers. "Ryan Taylor, hired less than a year ago for the Urban Projects Department," the assistant replied, quickly consulting her tablet. "Graduated with honors from Columbia University, but he's from Brownsville." Victoria raised an eyebrow, her expression as unreadable as ever. "Interesting," was all she said as the presentation continued. The next morning, Karen was more relentless than ever. Humiliated by the presentation incident, she decided to take it all out on Ryan. "Do you really think you can make me look incompetent in front of the investors?" she whispered venomously, leaning over his desk. "I don't know how someone of your background managed to get into this company, but I guarantee you won't last long here." Ryan kept his composure despite his racing heart. "I was just doing my job, Karen. The numbers were wrong and the numbers I prepared were perfectly fine," she interrupted, raising her voice just enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "Maybe if you spent less time trying to show off and more time checking your own work, we wouldn't have to redo the Spring Garden housing project for the third time." It was a blatant lie. The project had only been revised once and at the client's request. Ryan felt his face burn, aware of his colleagues' stares. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others watched with malicious curiosity. That same afternoon, as Ryan worked intently on a new project, his computer screen displayed a notification that froze his blood. "Immediate meeting, President's office." "Well, this is it. She finally got me fired," he muttered to himself, adjusting his tie and trying to steady his trembling hands as he walked down the mirrored hallway leading to Victoria Harrison's office. The secretary ushered him in immediately. Victoria stood by the window offering a panoramic view of New York City, her elegant silhouette framed against the skyline. She turned slowly at the sound of the door closing. "Ryan Taylor," she said, her tone neutral and impossible to decipher. "Have a seat, please." He obeyed, mentally preparing himself for the termination. He had come so far, overcome so many obstacles. How would he explain it to Grandma Rose, who was so proud of him? "I'll get straight to the point," Victoria continued, sitting across from him. "I'm assembling a team for a confidential project that could revolutionize social housing in the United States. After seeing your intervention yesterday, I want you on that team." Ryan blinked several times, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Excuse me, Ms. Harrison, but are you sure? Karen just informed me that my performance is below expectations and—" A faint smile crossed Victoria's lips, cutting him off. "I have my own eyes and brain, Mr. Taylor. I know talent when I see it, and please call me Victoria. We'll be working very closely from now on." At that moment, Ryan couldn't have imagined just how true those words would prove to be, nor how that meeting would completely change the course of his life. 3 floors below, Karen Wilson glanced at her watch with a satisfied smile. The prodigy was surely being reprimanded at that very moment. Soon he'd be clearing out his desk, while she finally had peace to run her department without that constant reminder of her distant son. What she didn't know was that, at that same instant, seeds were being planted for a twist no one in that company could foresee. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. The confidential project required frequent meetings between Ryan and Victoria. At first, they met in the top-floor conference room, with a distant view of Central Park. But soon, to avoid speculation and ensure discretion, Victoria suggested they meet at her spacious Upper East Side apartment on some evenings. "We need privacy to develop this concept," she explained with professional ease, as they served themselves dinner her housekeeper had prepared before leaving. "I have a study I've turned into an office. We'll work better there." Ryan agreed, though he felt a twinge of nervousness. Victoria Harrison was a legend in the US real estate market. At 40, she led one of the country's largest architecture firms, having built her reputation on innovative projects and impeccable work ethic. The youngest daughter of the company's founder had turned a successful family business into an international empire. The project they were developing was truly revolutionary, a sustainable social housing model that could be implemented at low cost across various regions of the United States while maintaining architectural quality and dignity for residents. "My father believed quality architecture shouldn't be a privilege of the wealthy," Victoria explained one evening as they studied blueprints spread across the large wooden table. "But he never balanced the financial equation. I think we're finally getting there, thanks to your ideas on alternative materials." The admiring look she gave him made Ryan's heart race inexplicably. There was something about this powerful woman that intrigued him more and more. "I learned a lot about creative improvisation growing up in Brownsville," he replied, allowing himself a rare moment of openness. "When you don't have resources, you have to be resourceful." Victoria tilted her head, studying him with genuine curiosity. "Tell me more about that. What was your childhood like there?" The question caught Ryan off guard. In his 28 years, he'd learned to keep his personal history private in professional settings, but there was something in the way Victoria asked that made him lower his guard. "I was raised by my grandmother after losing my parents in an accident when I was 8, he began, surprising himself with his willingness to share. "Grandma Rose worked as a housekeeper in several homes. I sometimes went with her, and it was in one of those houses that I discovered architecture. The owner was an architect. He had books and models. He let me flip through architecture magazines while I waited for Grandma to finish." Victoria watched him intently, her expression a mix of surprise and something else Ryan couldn't quite place. "And how did you get into Columbia? It's not an easy school to get into, especially for architecture." Ryan smiled, remembering the years of hard work. 3 jobs at the same time during high school. I was a delivery boy in the morning, a diner attendant in the afternoon, and a night watchman on weekends. I studied during breaks and late at night. When I got into college with a full Pell Grant, my grandmother cried for a whole week." He paused, realizing he might have been oversharing. "Sorry, I think we got off track from the project." "Not at all," Victoria replied, her tone softer now. "Sometimes we need to know the architect to truly understand the architecture." There was a moment of silence between them, heavy with something unspoken. Victoria was the first to break eye contact, turning her attention back to the blueprints with a slight cough. "I think that's enough for today. It's getting late." As Ryan gathered his things to leave, he didn't notice the lingering look Victoria gave him, or how she seemed about to say something more before stopping herself. The next day, as soon as Ryan arrived at the office, Tyler, one of the interns, pulled him aside. "Dude, Karen is on the warpath," he whispered. "She found out you're working directly with Dr. Harrison and is telling everyone you only got the position because, well, you're sleeping with her." Ryan felt his blood run cold. "That's ridiculous. It's a professional project and—" "I know, man, I know," Tyler cut in. "But you know how Karen is, and now she's got allies. That Amber from HR is helping spread the rumor." Ryan spent the day on edge, noticing the stares and whispers following him through the halls. When his phone buzzed late in the afternoon, with a message from Victoria asking to meet in the parking garage instead of the office, his stomach dropped. Had the rumors already reached her? When he reached the underground garage, he found Victoria already inside her black Lexus, engine running. She simply gestured for him to get in. "We'll continue working at the cafe near my apartment," she said as he settled into the passenger seat. "We need a more neutral environment." Her tone made it clear she knew about the rumors. The 20-minute drive to the cafe in the Upper East Side passed in awkward silence. Only when they were seated in a quiet corner of the elegant cafe, untouched coffee cups in front of them, did Victoria finally address it. "I assume you've heard the talk at the office," she said directly, her eyes locked on his. Ryan swallowed hard. I heard today. I'm sorry my involvement is causing this kind of trouble for you. If you prefer, I can step away from the project and... Don't even think about it, she cut in firmly. I won't let petty gossip interfere with something this important. This project can change lives, Ryan, including yours. There was a resolve in her voice that left no room for argument. What do we do then? He asked, feeling both relieved and uneasy. Victoria took a sip of her coffee, thoughtful. We keep working, but we'll be more careful. Meetings in public places like this, clear documentation of all our discussions, always including at least one other person when possible. She paused before continuing, her voice lower. And we need to talk about Karen Wilson. Ryan tensed at the name. What about her? I need to understand why she has so much hostility toward you. There's more to this than just professional rivalry. Ryan hesitated. It wasn't in his nature to speak ill of colleagues, especially superiors. But if anyone at the firm could handle the situation, it was Victoria. Honestly, I don't know, he admitted. From my first day, she's had it out for me. At first, I thought it was just a test for the new employee, but after months, he shook his head. I never did anything to provoke her. Victoria studied him for a moment, as if weighing the sincerity of his words. I'll look into this discreetly, she finally decided. In the meantime, focus on the project. I have a video conference scheduled with potential investors next week, and we need something concrete to present. As they left the cafe, Victoria suggested they take separate taxis to avoid further rumors. Before saying goodbye, however, she briefly held his arm. Ryan, I want you to know how much I value your work and your integrity. Don't let these petty things affect you. The casual touch and words of support stayed with Ryan long after that meeting, stirring up confusing feelings he'd rather not examine too closely. The days that followed were filled with intense work and constant tension in the office. Ryan could feel Karen's eyes like daggers in his back whenever they crossed paths in the hallways. The rumors, instead of fading, seemed to take on new versions each day. The latest one suggested he was the illegitimate son of some high-ranking executive and was being favored because of it. It was on a particularly stressful Tuesday that Victoria called an extraordinary meeting for the entire design department. As he entered the conference room, Ryan immediately noticed not only Victoria's presence, but also that of the CFO and the head of HR. Karen arrived last, wearing her usual air of confidence, which faltered slightly when she noticed the senior leadership in attendance. Good morning, everyone, Victoria began, her voice as professional and direct as ever. I've called you here to make two important announcements. She paused deliberately, her eyes scanning every face in the room before continuing. First, I'm pleased to announce that the Phoenix project, developed over the past few months, has received unanimous approval from the board and already has 3 confirmed international investors. Murmurs of surprise spread through the room. No one, aside from Ryan and 2 other team members who had recently been brought into the confidential project, knew exactly what the Phoenix project was. For those who aren't yet familiar, Victoria continued, it's a new approach to sustainable, affordable housing that will revolutionize the market, and much of its initial concept came from Ryan Taylor's work. All eyes turned to Ryan, whose face grew warm. In the corner of the room, Karen looked as if she'd swallowed something particularly bitter. The second announcement, Victoria went on, her tone making everyone pay even closer attention, is a change in the department's management structure. Ryan saw Karen straighten in her chair, likely expecting recognition or a promotion. After careful performance reviews and several situations reported to HR, Victoria gave Karen a pointed look. We've decided the design department will benefit from new leadership. Effective today, Karen Wilson will be transferred to our Chicago branch, where she'll oversee regional projects. The room fell completely silent. The color drained from Karen's face as she opened and closed her mouth several times without making a sound. This is outrageous, she finally managed, her voice shaking with indignation. I've been in this department for 8 years. I built this team. And we're grateful for your contributions, Victoria replied with icy calm. but the company is moving in a new direction that requires different leadership skills. It's because of him, isn't it? Karen pointed at Ryan, completely losing her composure. Everyone knows what's going on between you two. That's why he's being favored. A shocked silence followed the accusation. Victoria didn't flinch. This statement only confirms our decision, Karen, she said coldly. Your inappropriate behavior and baseless accusations against colleagues have been documented over the past few weeks. You have two choices: accept the transfer or leave the company. The decision is yours. Karen looked around, seeking support among her colleagues, but found only uncomfortable expressions and averted gazes. With one last look of pure hatred at Ryan, she stood abruptly and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Victoria maintained perfect composure. Alison Parker will temporarily take over as department manager until we find a permanent replacement, she announced, indicating one of the senior coordinators. I appreciate everyone's understanding. You may all return to your work now. As the room slowly emptied amid excited whispers, Victoria discreetly signaled for Ryan to stay. When they were alone, she finally let her professional mask slip slightly. This should calm things down for now, she said, sitting down with a sigh. I've discovered some interesting things about our friend Karen. Ryan sat across from her, still processing what had just happened. Like what? She has a 26-year-old son who hasn't spoken to her in over 5 years. Apparently he works as an architect at a competing firm and has a profile very similar to yours. Humble beginnings, scholarship graduate, extremely talented. Ryan blinked in surprise. So she saw in me a constant reminder of the son who rejected her, most likely, Victoria finished. Not that it excuses her behavior, but at least it explains the obsession. She gathered some papers and stood. In any case, we need to focus on the Phoenix project now. The official press presentation is in 3 weeks, and we still have a lot of work ahead. As she headed for the door, Victoria paused and looked at Ryan with an expression softer than he'd ever seen on her face in the workplace. You've done excellent work, Ryan, not just with the project, but in maintaining your integrity despite the provocations. That says a lot about your character. The sincere praise warmed Ryan in a way he hadn't expected. As he watched her leave, he realized his feelings for his boss had long surpassed mere professional admiration. It was a frightening thought he immediately tried to push from his mind. After all, Victoria Harrison was on a completely different level than him. Some worlds kept them apart, no matter how closely they worked together or how much she valued his ideas. Some distances simply weren't meant to be crossed, or so he thought. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. In the weeks following Karen's departure, the atmosphere in the office changed completely. Without the oppressive presence of the former manager, Ryan felt more at ease expressing his ideas in team meetings. Gradually, the rumors about him and Victoria began to fade, though they never disappeared entirely. The Phoenix project progressed by leaps and bounds, consuming long work hours. The official launch was approaching, increasing the pressure on the entire team. Ryan often stayed in the office past 10 at night, reviewing details and refining the architectural concepts to be presented. On one such night, as he looked up from the technical drawings he was analyzing, he was surprised to see Victoria standing at the door of the design room, watching him. "Still here?" she asked, stepping inside. She had swapped her formal daytime suit for a more casual silk blouse, though no less elegant. "I wanted to finish these details for the water catchment system," he replied, rubbing his tired eyes. "I lost track of time." Victoria leaned closer, examining the drawings on the table. "I was also finalizing some documents for the presentation," she remarked, tilting her head to get a better look at the project details. The faint scent of her perfume momentarily distracted Ryan. "This system is truly innovative. It'll significantly reduce long-term operational costs. I learned from my grandmother that rainwater is far too precious to waste," Ryan said with a smile. "In Brownsville, she saved every drop she could for cleaning and watering plants." Victoria studied him for a moment, genuine curiosity in her gaze. "Do you visit her often? Your grandmother?" Every Sunday, he answered, surprised by the personal question. It's sacred, a full meal with homemade dessert included. She still lives in the same house I grew up in, though I've managed to make some structural improvements over the years. A soft smile touched Victoria's lips. She must be very proud of you. She is, though she still insists I'm too thin and need to eat more. Ryan laughed, leaning back in his chair. What about you? Do you visit your family too? The question came out naturally, but Ryan immediately regretted it, fearing he'd crossed some invisible line. To his surprise, Victoria didn't seem to mind. My parents passed away a few years ago, she replied, sitting on the edge of the drafting table. My father 8 years ago from a heart attack, my mother 2 years after that. The doctors said it was natural causes, but I've always believed it was from grief. There was a vulnerability in her voice Ryan had never heard before. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. Victoria shrugged lightly. That's life. I have an older brother, but he's lived in Europe for over a decade. We talk on the phone occasionally, but we're not close. That must be lonely, Ryan remarked before he could stop himself. A silence settled between them. For a moment, Ryan feared he'd gone too far, but then Victoria replied quietly, Sometimes it is, yes. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Victoria was the first to break the moment, glancing at her watch. It's late. We should head home and rest. Tomorrow's a full day of prep meetings. Ryan nodded, gathering his materials. Did you drive here? Victoria asked as they walked toward the elevator. No, I take the subway. Victoria hesitated for a second before offering, I can give you a ride. I live near Astoria station, if... I'm not mistaken. Ryan was surprised she knew where he lived, but accepted the offer. During the ride in her sleek Lexus, they talked about the project, but also about other things, movies they'd seen recently, favorite books, even preferred foods. It was as if, outside the office, they could finally see each other as people, not just professionals. When they reached the modest but well-kept building where Ryan lived, he turned to thank her for the ride. The words died in his throat when he noticed the intensity of Victoria's gaze. Ryan, she began, then stopped, as if wrestling with something internally. Yes? She shook her head slightly, as if dismissing a thought. Nothing, just get some rest. We need you at your best tomorrow. He nodded, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment. Good night, Victoria, and thanks for the ride. As he stepped into his apartment, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the look in Victoria's eyes, or the hesitation in her voice. There was something there, a tension they both felt, but neither dared to name. The next morning at the office, Victoria was as professional as ever, with no trace of the more personal connection from the night before. The days passed in a whirlwind of preparations for the big launch, and there were no more moments alone between them. Finally, the day of the official presentation of the Phoenix project arrived. The event would take place at a 5-star hotel in downtown New York City, with investors, officials, and the press in attendance. Ryan, as one of the lead developers of the concept, would be part of the presentation alongside Victoria. Wearing the new suit he had bought especially for the occasion, Ryan waited nervously in the hotel lobby. His grandmother had cried with pride watching him leave the house that morning, which only strengthened his determination to do an impeccable job. You look great, said a familiar voice behind him. Victoria approached, stunning in a slate-grey pantsuit that perfectly accentuated her elegant figure. Nervous? A little, he admitted. I've never spoken to such an important audience before. She smiled, gently adjusting his tie. You'll do wonderfully. I know few people who understand this project as well as you do. The casual touch and words of encouragement made Ryan's heart race. Before he could respond, they were called to the main hall where the presentation would begin in just a few minutes. The event was an absolute success. The presentation of the innovative concept for sustainable, affordable housing made a strong impression on the attendees. Ryan, initially nervous, found his confidence as he spoke about the technical solutions he had developed. When he finished his part, there was a spontaneous round of applause. Victoria led the closing with her usual elegance and authority, thanking the team and announcing that the first housing project, based on the Phoenix project, would begin construction in 3 months in an area on the east side of New York City. Media coverage was extensive and overwhelmingly positive. After the formal part, a reception followed, where investors and officials approached to speak with Victoria and Ryan, expressing interest and enthusiasm for the project. It was during this reception that Ryan noticed a familiar figure approaching. Amber from HR, the same one who had helped spread rumors about him and Victoria months earlier. She seemed uneasy, staring intently at Victoria while whispering something to another employee. "Excuse me," Ryan said to the investors he was speaking with, moving toward Amber, concerned about what she might be scheming. As he got closer, he caught fragments of the conversation. "I'm absolutely sure. My cousin works at the Che. That was a positive pregnancy test. Imagine the scandal." Ryan's heart stopped for a second. Were they talking about Victoria? Was she pregnant? His mind reeled at this unexpected information when he realized Victoria had approached as well, apparently, having overheard part of the conversation. "Amber, Peter." Victoria's voice was controlled, but her eyes held an icy fury. "If you're done speculating about my personal life, perhaps you could do something useful and help attend to our guests." Amber paled, realizing she'd been caught. "Dr. Harrison, I didn't... We were just... We'll discuss professional ethics and medical confidentiality later," Victoria cut in. "Now please leave." The two quickly retreated, visibly embarrassed. Victoria turned to Ryan, her face a mask of composure. "I apologize for their behavior," she said professionally. "Some people never learn." "Victoria, Ryan began, unsure how, or even if, he should address what he'd just heard. "Not now," she interrupted, her voice low and tense. "We have guests to attend to. We'll talk later." With that, she walked away to greet a group of investors who had just arrived, leaving Ryan with 1,000 unanswered questions. The rest of the reception passed in a blur for Ryan. He fulfilled his social obligations automatically, while his mind raced furiously. Was Victoria really pregnant? If so, with whom? They hadn't. But then he remembered the trip to Washington, D.C. a month and a half ago, to present the project to federal officials. The suite they'd accidentally shared, the wine to celebrate the preliminary approval, the tension finally giving way after months of unacknowledged attraction. By the time the last guest left, it was well past 11 at night. The team began to disperse, exhausted but pleased with the event's success. Victoria had disappeared about half an hour earlier, claiming an important call. Ryan was about to leave too, when he received a message on his phone. "Can we talk? I'm on the hotel terrace." His heart pounding, he took the elevator to the top floor. He found Victoria alone, gazing at the nighttime view of New York City, the city lights reflecting on her thoughtful face. "Victoria?" he called softly. She turned, and for the first time since he'd known her, Ryan saw true vulnerability in her usually composed expression. "Is it true?" he asked directly, deciding there was no room for beating around the bush now. "What Amber was saying?" Victoria took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "Yes, I confirmed it 3 days ago." A heavy silence settled between them. "Is it mine?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Victoria looked at him, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "Of course it's yours. Ryan, what kind of woman do you think I am?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply," he stammered, realizing his mistake. "It's just, this is so unexpected." "Believe me, it was for me too," she said, turning back to the city below. "At 40, after deciding long ago that my career would be my only priority, finding out I'm pregnant wasn't exactly part of the plan." Ryan stepped closer, stopping beside her at the railing. "What do you plan to do?" he asked gently. Victoria turned to him, her eyes searching his. "Honestly, I don't know. My first reaction was panic. Then I started considering all the implications for my career, for the firm, for both of us." She paused. "But then last night, I caught myself looking at the ultrasound and thinking that maybe, just maybe, this is a second chance I never imagined I'd have." Ryan felt his heart swell as he listened to her. "Do you want this baby?" "I think so," she replied, a rare vulnerability in her voice. "But I'll completely understand if you don't want involvement." There was no commitment between us. It was just one night and your career is just taking off. I don't want to be a burden or a complication." Ryan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Victoria Harrison, the strongest, most independent woman he'd ever known, worried about being a burden to him. On impulse, he took her hand in his. "Victoria, you're carrying my child. Or daughter." His voice wavered slightly on the last word. "If you decide to go through with this pregnancy, I want you to know I'll be by your side every step of the way. Not because I feel obligated, but because I want to be." Her eyes glistened with restrained emotion. "Ryan, are you sure? People will talk. Your reputation at the firm—" "Let them talk," he replied with surprising conviction. "I've spent my whole life listening to people tell me what I couldn't achieve, where I didn't belong. I never let them stop me before, and I'm not about to start now." A small smile touched Victoria's lips. "You're full of surprises, you know that?" she said softly. "When I first saw you saving that presentation, I thought, this young man has something special." I had no idea how right I was. Ryan felt a wave of courage rush through him. It was now or never. "Victoria, what happened in Washington, D.C.? It wasn't just a casual night for me. I've had feelings for you for a long time, but I never imagined there could be a real chance between us." She studied him for a long moment before answering. "For me, it wasn't casual either, Ryan. But I was afraid to admit it. Even to myself. The age difference, the company hierarchy, the inevitable comments, it all seemed too complicated." "And now?" he asked, his heart racing. "Now we have a new variable in the equation," she replied, instinctively placing a hand on her still flat stomach. "One that changes everything." Ryan took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Regardless of the baby, I want you to know my feelings for you are real, deep. If you want to really try to build something together, I'm willing to face any challenge." Victoria looked at him with a mix of emotion and uncertainty. "It won't be easy, Ryan. The board, the shareholders, the press, they'll all have strong opinions about this." "I know," he replied, "but I think we've already proven we're good at overcoming obstacles, haven't we?" A genuine smile brightened Victoria's face. She reached up and gently touched his cheek. "Yes, I think we have. That night under the stars of New York City, two souls from completely different worlds found common ground, united by something neither had planned, but perhaps exactly what both had secretly wished for. What they didn't know was that, as they sealed the moment with a kiss, a figure watched from the terrace door. Amber from HR, phone in hand, capturing the moment that would soon become the talk of the entire company. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. The photograph spread like wildfire. The next morning, when Ryan arrived at the office, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Conversations stopped abruptly as he approached. Curious glances followed him down the halls, and even the security guard at the entrance gave him an unusually knowing smile. It was Tyler, the intern who had always been loyal to him, who finally showed him the phone with the image circulating in every company group chat. Ryan and Victoria kissing on the terrace, captioned with the snide remark, "The real secret behind the Phoenix Project's success." "Is this for real?" Tyler asked, genuinely curious. "You and Dr. Harrison?" Ryan felt a mix of anger and worry, not for the exposure of his personal life, but for the potential damage to Victoria's reputation and the future of the project they had worked so hard to build. "Tyler, I can't talk about this right now," he replied, trying to stay calm. "But I appreciate you showing me. I need to go." He headed straight for the executive floor, ignoring the stares and whispers. Victoria's secretary tried to stop him, saying she was in a meeting, but he insisted, "It's urgent, Deborah. She'll want to know about this immediately." Reluctantly, the secretary allowed him in after a brief announcement. Ryan found Victoria in her office with the CFO and the corporate lawyer, both wearing grave expressions. "Ryan," Victoria said as she saw him, her tone professional but her eyes conveying a silent warning. "We were just talking about you." The CFO, a man in his 60s with a perpetually skeptical expression, gave him an assessing look. "Mr. Taylor, we were discussing certain allegations that surfaced this morning. About this, Ryan interrupted, showing his phone with the image Tyler had sent him. I imagine this is the issue. The corporate lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Actually, Mr. Taylor, the issue goes beyond an indiscreet photograph. We also have allegations of undue favoritism, possible conflicts of interest, and, most concerning, insinuations that you may have been promoted or assigned to the Phoenix Project due to personal involvement with Dr. Harrison. Ryan felt his blood boil. That's completely absurd. I was selected for the project based on my professional merit, months before any... Ryan, Victoria's firm voice cut him off. Please, sit down. He obeyed, realizing that losing control would only make the situation worse. Victoria addressed the two executives. Gentlemen, as I've already explained, Ryan Taylor was selected for the Phoenix Project solely for his exceptional talent and the innovative ideas he presented in previous projects. We have extensive documentation proving the project's progress and his substantial contributions, which began long before any personal involvement between us. The CFO didn't seem convinced. Dr. Harrison, I understand your position, but the board is extremely concerned about the fallout. We've already received 3 calls from major shareholders questioning the company's corporate governance. Not to mention, the lawyer added, the potential legal implications. The company's policy is quite clear regarding relationships between superiors and subordinates. Victoria maintained her composed demeanor, but Ryan could see the tension in her eyes. I'm aware of the policy, Dr. Mitchell. I'm also aware that I'm not the first executive in this company to have a relationship with a co-worker. The difference is that as a woman, my personal conduct is scrutinized far more harshly. The pointed remark momentarily silenced the two men. Victoria seized the moment to continue. In any case, I'm not shirking my responsibilities. I'm prepared to call an emergency board meeting and explain the situation, accepting whatever consequences are necessary. Victoria, no, Ryan protested. There's no reason for you to sacrifice yourself. She gave him a look that blended resolve and a tenderness only he could recognize. I'm not sacrificing myself, Ryan. I'm facing this situation the way I've faced every challenge in my career, head-on. Turning back to the executives, she concluded, Gentlemen, I'd like some privacy to speak with Mr. Taylor. Afterward, you can schedule the board meeting for this afternoon. I'll be ready. Reluctantly, the two men left, leaving Ryan and Victoria alone in the spacious office. As soon as the door closed, Victoria sighed, allowing some of her tension to show. I'm sorry about this, Ryan said, stepping closer. To her, we should have been more careful. It's not your fault, she replied, lightly massaging her temples. It was inevitable they'd find out eventually. I just didn't expect it to be so soon or in such a spectacular way. She gestured to the chair beside hers, inviting him to sit. Ryan, I need you to understand something. This company was built by my father. It's his legacy, and now it's my responsibility. I can't and won't let it go, no matter what happens. Ryan nodded, understanding the depth of her commitment to the company. At the same time, Victoria continued, her tone softening. I've discovered in the last 24 hours that there are things even more important I'm not willing to sacrifice. This baby, for example. She placed a hand on her stomach. And you. Ryan's heart raced at her words. So what are we going to do? Victoria reflected for a moment before answering. I'll speak to the board honestly. I'll explain the situation, including the pregnancy, and propose a solution that protects both the company and our relationship. What solution? A small smile touched her lips. I'm still working out the details, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, in that meeting room today, my feelings for you won't change. Are you ready to face this with me? Ryan took her hand in his. More than ready. The board meeting was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. Ryan spent the next few hours in a growing state of anxiety, unable to focus on work. At 2:30, he received a message from Victoria. Meet me in the boardroom at 3:15, trust me. When he arrived on the executive floor at the appointed time, the meeting had already been underway for 15 minutes. The board secretary, a stern-looking woman, greeted him with disapproval. Mr. Taylor, Dr. Harrison has requested your presence. You may go in. As he opened the door to the imposing boardroom, Ryan felt every eye turn toward him. The full board was present. 12 senior executives, mostly men over 50, looking at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval, and in some cases, open hostility. Victoria stood at the head of the table, magnificent in her natural authority. Her face betrayed no emotion, but her eyes brightened slightly when she saw him enter. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said firmly, "this is Ryan Taylor, the architect, whose innovations form the backbone of the Phoenix project that excited you all last week." A tense silence filled the room as Ryan took his place beside Victoria. "Ryan," she continued, "I've just informed the board about our personal situation, including the pregnancy. I've also presented my proposal to address any perceived conflict of interest." Ryan swallowed hard, uncertain what to expect. The board chairman, a grey-haired man with a calculating expression, spoke up. "Mr. Taylor," Dr. Harrison surprised, "asked today with several revelations. I admit many of us are troubled by the situation." "I understand, sir," Ryan replied with all the dignity he could muster. "But I want to make it clear that my relationship with Dr. Harrison has never interfered with our professional responsibilities. The Phoenix project is the result of hard work and a shared vision for the future of the company and social housing in the United States." One of the few women on the board, an executive in her 60s, leaned forward. "Young man, no one here questions your professional abilities. The results speak for themselves. The issue is the appearance of impropriety and the potential repercussions for our corporate reputation." Victoria intervened. "As I explained, my proposal eliminates that problem. Ryan will be transferred to lead the practical implementation of the Phoenix project, reporting directly to the board, not to me. This removes any hierarchical conflict, allowing both the project and our relationship to proceed without compromising the company's integrity." The CFO, who had been in Victoria's office earlier, looked skeptical. "And what about the pregnancy? Frankly, Victoria, you're the face of this company. A pregnancy outside of traditional marriage with an employee 12 years younger. The press will feast on this for months." Ryan felt a surge of indignation, but before he could respond, Victoria spoke with controlled coolness. "Charles, it's 2023, not 1950. I'm a 40-year-old woman, financially independent, emotionally stable, and perfectly capable of managing both my personal life and this company, pregnant or not. If the board is more concerned with gossip than the fact that we've just developed a groundbreaking project that will attract millions in investments, perhaps we should reconsider the strategic direction of Taylor and Harrison architecture." A tense silence followed her words. Then, to everyone's surprise, a low, appreciative laugh came from the end of the table. It was George Lambert, the longest-serving board member and a personal friend of Victoria's late father. "My God, you're just like your father," he said, shaking his head with a smile. "Anthony also had that gift of putting us all in our place when we started losing focus on what really matters." He looked around the table, his expression turning serious. "Ladies and gentlemen, are we seriously discussing penalizing our CEO, who just secured this firm's biggest breakthrough in a decade, because she dared to fall in love and conceive a child? That's ridiculous, and you know it." The atmosphere in the room began to shift subtly. Victoria continued, "I understand the genuine concerns about corporate governance, which is why I proposed the restructuring that eliminates the hierarchical conflict. As for the rest," she looked directly at Ryan before continuing, "we're committed to each other and to our son. If this will negatively impact the company's image in some people's eyes, I'm willing to step down." "No!" Ryan exclaimed, unable to contain himself. All eyes turned to him, surprised by his vehemence. "With all due respect to the board," he continued, regaining his composure, "Victoria Harrison is the soul of this company. Her commitment to excellence and her vision are what made the Phoenix project possible. If my presence is the problem, then I should be the one to leave." Victoria stared at him, a mix of emotion and admiration in her eyes. The board chair cleared his throat, regaining control of the meeting. "I don't believe we need to take such drastic measures. Dr. Harrison's proposal seems reasonable, as long as it's implemented with full transparency." He looked around the table. "Shall we vote?" One by one, the board members voiced their opinions. Despite some reservations, an overwhelming majority supported Victoria's continued role as CEO and the proposed restructuring. However, there was one additional condition. The official announcement of their relationship and the pregnancy had to be made in a controlled manner, preempting any media speculation. When the meeting finally ended, Ryan felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Victoria formally thanked the board, and after the customary farewells, the two of them walked out together. In the empty hallway, away from corporate eyes, Victoria finally let her mask of absolute control slip slightly. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked, concerned. She nodded, opening her eyes to look at him. "I am. Just a little tired and relieved." He resisted the urge to hug her right then, aware they were still in a professional setting. "You were amazing in there. I don't even know how to thank you for—" "Don't thank me," she interrupted softly. "I did what was right for all of us. For the company, for you, for me, and for this baby." She glanced around to make sure they were truly alone before continuing. "Ryan, there's something I'd like to ask you." "Anything," he replied instantly. A small smile touched her lips. "I'd like you to see my home. Not the Upper East Side apartment where we've been meeting to work, but my real home in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's where I plan to raise our child." The simplicity and depth of the invitation moved Ryan deeply. "I'd love to see your home," he answered sincerely. "Great," she said, stepping away from the wall and resuming her professional demeanor. "Now we need to get back to work and start implementing all the changes we just negotiated." As they walked side by side down the hallway, maintaining the appropriate professional distance but with a new invisible closeness between them, Ryan realized his life had irrevocably changed. And for the first time in a long while, the future seemed to shine with possibilities he had never dared to dream of. That same evening, Amber from HR received a call from the Human Resources Director, summoning her to an urgent meeting the next morning. The subject: violation of medical confidentiality and workplace harassment. Her reign of gossip was about to come to an abrupt end. Meanwhile, in a comfortable apartment in Chicago, Karen Wilson was watching the financial news when a segment about the successful launch of Taylor & Harrison Architecture's Phoenix project caught her attention. Seeing Ryan and Victoria side by side at the press conference, her face twisted into a bitter expression. The phone in her hand displayed several unanswered messages from her son, yet another failed attempt at reconciliation. The irony wasn't lost on her. While she had lost her son due to her obsession with work and inability to show affection, Ryan and Victoria were building a family despite all the obstacles. With a heavy sigh, Karen turned off the TV and picked up her phone, staring at her son's picture on the screen. Maybe it was time to try again before it was too late. A week after the tumultuous board meeting, Ryan nervously drove through the tree-lined streets of Greenwich, Connecticut, following his GPS to Victoria's house. It was a sunny Sunday, perfect for the lunch she had suggested. He wore his best shirt, and on the passenger seat rested a small bouquet of flowers he had personally picked out. When the GPS announced his arrival, Ryan was momentarily speechless. Victoria's house was actually an elegant property surrounded by trees, with contemporary architecture that blended seamlessly into the natural landscape. Nothing ostentatious, but undeniably sophisticated, just like its owner. As he parked at the entrance, he saw Victoria coming out to greet him. She looked different from the executive he knew from the office, dressed in light linen pants and a loose blouse, her usually tied-up hair now cascading over her shoulders. She seemed younger, more relaxed. "Did you find it okay?" she asked with a smile as he stepped out of the car with the flowers in hand. "The GPS helped," Ryan replied, handing her the bouquet. "These are for you. I didn't know your favorites, so—" "They're beautiful, thank you," she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Come on, let me show you the house." The property was even more impressive inside. Spacious, bright rooms, elegant yet cozy decor, and huge windows framing the lush garden. Victoria guided him through each space, explaining how her father had bought the land decades ago and how she had redesigned the house after inheriting it. "And this," she said, stopping in front of a closed door at the end of the hallway, will be the baby's room. She opened the door to reveal an empty but full of potential space, with a large window overlooking a centuries-old tree. I haven't started decorating yet, she explained. Actually, I was hoping we could do it together. Ryan felt a wave of emotion as he grasped the meaning behind her words. Victoria wasn't just sharing her home with him, she was inviting him to be part of her life and her child's life in ways that went far beyond occasional visits. I'd love to, he replied, his voice slightly thick with emotion. They moved to the kitchen, where Victoria surprised Ryan once again by revealing she had prepared lunch herself. I don't cook often, she admitted with a shy smile, but my mother always said certain moments deserve a personal touch, no matter how busy you are. As they ate on the sunny porch overlooking the well-kept garden, the conversation flowed naturally. They talked about work, of course, but also about books, music, old dreams, and hopes for the future. Ryan shared more about his childhood in Brownsville, the life lessons his grandmother had taught him, and how he had always dreamed of creating projects that would improve the lives of communities like the one he grew up in. Victoria, in turn, shared memories of her father, how he had taught her about architecture from a young age, taking her to construction sites, and explaining complex concepts in ways a child could understand. He would be proud of the Phoenix project, she said, gazing at the horizon with a hint of longing. It was exactly the kind of initiative he always wanted to develop, but could never balance with the firm's commercial demands. I'm sure he would be very proud of you, Ryan replied sincerely, not just because of the project, but because of everything you've built. Victoria smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face in a way Ryan rarely saw in the office. You know, I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks, she said, her voice softer, about how life sometimes takes completely unexpected turns. A year ago, I was entirely focused on my career, convinced it was all I needed or wanted. And now, she gestured toward the garden, the house, and finally rested her hand on her belly, still showing no visible signs of pregnancy. Ryan nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. My grandmother has a saying, God moves in mysterious ways, he remarked. I never fully understood what it meant until now. Victoria reached across the table, intertwining her fingers with his. Ryan, I know all of this has happened very fast. An unexpected pregnancy, everything going on at the firm. It would be completely understandable if you felt overwhelmed or had doubts. I do have doubts, he admitted honestly, about whether I'll be a good father, about how to balance everything with work, about how to handle the scrutiny we'll surely face. But I don't have doubts about you or about us. Victoria's eyes shimmered with restrained emotion. I have my own insecurities too, she confessed, with a vulnerability she rarely showed. I'll be 41 when this baby is born. I never imagined motherhood as part of my life. And honestly, I don't know if I have what it takes to be a good mother. Ryan gently squeezed her hand. Victoria, you lead hundreds of people every day. You turn visions into reality. You build things others think are impossible. I have no doubt motherhood will just be another challenge you'll face with the same determination and excellence. A tear escaped, rolling down Victoria's cheek, before she could stop it. With a small embarrassed laugh, she quickly wiped it away. These pregnancy hormones are making me emotional, she joked, though they both knew it was more than that. But thank you, Ryan. Your confidence means so much to me. After lunch, they walked through the garden, talking about plans for the future. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting golden patterns on the stone path. There's something I want to show you, Victoria said, leading him to a small attached structure that appeared to be a studio. Upon opening the door, she revealed a bright space filled with drafting tables, a computer with architecture software, and shelves packed with books and materials. This was my father's workspace, she explained. After he passed, I couldn't bring myself to change a thing, but lately I've been thinking it might be time to give this place new life. Ryan moved through the room with reverence, admiring the rare architecture books and framed sketches on the walls. It's an incredible place to work, he remarked, imagining the great architect who had once created there. I thought you might like to use it, Victoria said, watching his reaction closely. To develop ideas, work on personal projects, or even for the next steps of the Phoenix project. I know your apartment is small, and with the baby coming. Ryan looked at her, surprised and deeply moved by the offer. Victoria, this is... He hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Are you sure? This space clearly means so much. To you? She nodded, stepping closer. My father always said that spaces like people need to breathe, live and evolve. He'd be happy knowing his studio is helping shape the next generation of groundbreaking ideas. The unspoken meaning in her words wasn't lost on Ryan. Victoria wasn't just offering a workspace, she was offering a place in her life, her home, her future. On impulse, he closed the distance between them and kissed her softly. She responded, wrapping her arms around him in an embrace that said more than words ever could. When they parted, Ryan kept his hands gently at her waist. I think we should make this official, he said, surprising even himself with his boldness. Victoria raised, an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. Official? This weekend I want you to meet my grandmother, he explained. It's important to me that the two most important women in my life know each other. Victoria's smile widened, lighting up her face. I'd love to meet Grandma Rose. I just hope she approves of the woman who stole her grandson's heart. She'll adore you, Ryan assured her, though privately he knew his grandmother, with her frank and direct manner, would have plenty of questions for the sophisticated executive carrying her great-grandchild. The rest of the afternoon passed peacefully, with Victoria showing Ryan around her favorite spots on the property, including a small garden she tended as a hobby during rare moments of downtime. As evening fell, Ryan reluctantly mentioned he should leave, with an early meeting the next morning. At the door as they said goodbye, Victoria held his hands in hers. Thank you for today, she said sincerely. For so long, this house felt too big for just me. Today, for the first time, it truly felt like a home. Ryan's heart swelled at those simple yet profound words. Victoria, He hesitated, then decided to simply say what he felt. I love you. It was the first time he'd said those words to her, and for a moment he worried he'd been too hasty. But the radiant smile that lit up Victoria's face erased any doubt. I love you too, Ryan, she replied softly. And it terrifies and excites me more than any professional challenge I've ever faced. They kissed once more, a silent promise of the future they were beginning to build together. When Ryan finally got into his car and drove away, he carried with him the certainty that his life had found new meaning, one that transcended all the professional ambitions he'd once held. On the way home, he decided to take a detour. There was one place he needed to visit before ending this perfect. Teosamus, he drove to Brownsville, to the small house where he'd grown up and where his grandmother still lived. He found Grandma Rose on the porch, as she had been on so many evenings over the years, watching the street while knitting. My boy, she exclaimed with joy upon seeing him. What a wonderful surprise. Did something happen? Ryan sat beside her, on the small wooden bench his grandfather had built decades earlier. Yes, Grandma, he replied, a broad smile lighting up his face. Something did, and I need to tell you all about it. As night fell over New York City, Ryan shared with his grandmother the incredible story of how a boy from Brownsville was about to start a family with one of the most powerful women in American real estate. Grandma Rose listened, her eyes shining with pride, and her wrinkled hands holding tightly to her grandson's, just as they had during the most important moments of his life. In her mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, Victoria rested in her spacious bed, one hand on her belly where the new life that had transformed her world was growing. For the first time in many years, her thoughts as she drifted off weren't about meetings, projects, or corporate strategies, but about a shared future with a man who had entered her professional life and found his way into her heart. And somewhere between these two very different yet now interconnected worlds, fate smiled, pleased with the unexpected harmony it had orchestrated. What neither of them could foresee were the new challenges ahead, including an unexpected return that would test the strength of their still young union. But that was a story for another day. For now it was enough to savor the sweet certainty that together they could face any obstacle, just as they had so far. 3 months had passed since that Sunday at Victoria's house. The news of the relationship between the CEO and the young architect, now officially announced by the company, caused the expected stir in the business press, but was soon replaced by updates about the first development of the Phoenix project, whose construction had begun on the east side of New York City. Victoria, now entering her second trimester of pregnancy, maintained her impeccable professional routine, though she had quietly reduced some of her longer trips. A small bump was beginning to show beneath her elegant tailored suits, drawing curious glances and a few whispers in the company hallways. Ryan, meanwhile, had adjusted well to his new role as implementation director of the Phoenix project. His team, initially wary due to the circumstances of his promotion, quickly recognized his genuine talent and dedication. The respect he earned didn't come from his relationship with the CEO, but from his hard work and innovative vision. On Sundays, a new tradition had formed. Lunch alternated between Victoria's home in Greenwich and Grandma Rose's modest house in Brownsville. The first meeting between the two women had been memorable, with Ryan's grandmother subjecting Victoria to a subtle but decisive interrogation about her intentions with her grandson and the future great-grandchild. To Ryan's surprise, Victoria had passed the test with flying colors, winning over Grandma Rose with her sincerity and genuine respect. The two women from such different worlds had developed an unexpected bond, united by their love for Ryan and the anticipation of the baby on the way. On that particular Saturday, Ryan was at the construction site of the first housing development for the Phoenix project, checking the progress of the foundations when he received an unexpected call. "Ryan Taylor?" asked an unfamiliar male voice. "Yes, who's speaking?" "My name is Robert Harrison. I'm Victoria's brother." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. He knew Victoria had an older brother who lived in Europe, with whom she kept sporadic contact, but they had never spoken before. "Hello, Robert. Victoria mentioned you." "I imagine she did." The voice on the other end sounded clipped, devoid of any warmth. "I'm calling to let you know I arrived in New York City last night and would like to speak with you, in person and privately." Ryan tried to stay calm, though his instincts told him this wasn't a friendly family introduction. "Of course, when would be convenient?" "Today. At 7 p.m. I'll be at the bar in the Plaza Hotel on the Upper East Side. Come alone and don't mention this call to Victoria." Before Ryan could respond, Robert hung up. For a moment he considered calling Victoria immediately, but something stopped him. If her brother had returned to the United States after so long, he must have his reasons. Maybe it was better to hear what he had to say first. The rest of the day dragged on, with Ryan torn between his professional duties and the growing unease about the impending meeting. At exactly 7 p.m., he stepped into the elegant bar of the five-star hotel, easily spotting Robert at a discreet corner table. The resemblance to Victoria was striking. The same piercing eyes, impeccable posture, a natural air of authority. But while Victoria radiated warm confidence, Robert exuded a calculated coldness that instantly put Ryan on edge. "Mr. Taylor," Robert greeted without standing, casually gesturing to the chair across from him. "Punctual. I appreciate that." Ryan sat, studying the man who would be his child's uncle. "Robert, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Victoria will be thrilled to know you're in New York." A humorless smile touched Robert's lips. "Let's skip the pleasantries, shall we? I'm not here to make friends. I'm here because I've received disturbing news about my sister and our family's firm." Ryan kept his expression neutral, though his stomach tightened. "What kind of news?" Robert signaled the waiter, ordering 2 whiskeys without consulting Ryan. When the drinks arrived, he took a sip before continuing. "I've learned my sister is pregnant with a junior architect she hired less than a year ago, a young man from a modest background, no significant connections or assets, 12 years her junior." Each word was precise, like tiny, sharp blades. "Under circumstances that, at the very least, raise serious concerns about conflicts of interest and professional judgment." Ryan took a deep breath, steadying the anger rising in his chest. "I understand your concern as her brother," he replied, carefully. "But I assure you my relationship with Victoria is built on mutual respect and genuine affection." As for professional matters, the board has already reviewed and approved the necessary adjustments to avoid any conflict. Robert laughed, a cold, unpleasant sound. Kid, do you really think I care about your genuine affection? He shook his head. Let me be blunt. Taylor & Harrison is a family-owned firm with $1 billion legacy. Victoria, as the sole active heir since our parents' passing, controls the majority stake, and now she's carrying a child who technically would inherit it all. The realization hit Ryan like a punch. You think I'm with Victoria for money? That I got her pregnant as part of some scheme? You wouldn't be the first or the last, Robert replied indifferently. But honestly, I don't care about your motives. What matters is protecting my family's legacy. He leaned forward, his icy gaze locked on Ryan. So here's a simple offer, $3 million. In exchange, you relinquish all claims to the child, leave the firm and disappear from my sister's life, preferably move to another state. Ryan felt a wave of nausea and disbelief. Are you trying to bribe me into abandoning your sister and my son? I'm offering a clean, profitable way out before things get messy, corrected Robert, his voice dangerously smooth. Victoria may be charmed now, but she's a Harrison. Eventually she'll realize the mistake she made getting involved with someone so unsuitable for her position. Something inside Ryan snapped. He stood abruptly, leaning over the table. Listen carefully, Robert. I don't care about your money, your last name, or your opinion of me. I love your sister, and I'll love our son no matter the circumstances. If you truly cared about Victoria, you'd be happy she found someone who values her for who she is, not what she has. Robert remained unshaken, watching him with clinical curiosity. Nice speech, but every man has his price. Maybe $3 million isn't enough. We can negotiate. Ryan shook his head, feeling only pity. You don't get it, do you? That's your problem. You really believe everything and everyone has a price because that's how you see the world. I feel sorry for you. He stepped away from the table, then paused and turned back. One last thing. I'm telling Victoria everything. Not because I expect her to cut ties with you, her own brother, but because we don't keep secrets from each other. That's the kind of relationship we've built. Maybe one day you'll understand the value of that. Ryan left the bar without looking back, his heart pounding. Robert's arrogance and coldness had shaken him deeply, but more than that, he felt sad for Victoria. She deserved a better brother. As he stepped out of the hotel, he hesitated only a moment before pulling out his phone and dialing. Victoria answered on the second ring. Hi, love, on your way home. The casual way she said home, referring to the house they now shared in Greenwich, Connecticut, still warmed his heart. On my way, but we need to talk. Something happened that you should know. A pause on the other end. Sounds serious. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine, he assured her. It's about your brother. He's in New York City. The silence that followed spoke volumes. I see, she said finally, her voice taking on the professional tone Ryan recognized from tough situations. At work. Come home. We'll talk when you get here. The drive to Greenwich felt endless. When he finally arrived, he found Victoria in the garden, watching the sunset with a thoughtful expression. Seeing him, she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. So Robert finally decided to show up, she said as Ryan approached. What exactly did he say? Ryan hesitated, unsure how to soften the blow. He opted for direct honesty. He offered me money to leave you and the firm and give up any rights to our son. Victoria closed her eyes for a moment, pain flickering across her face. When she opened them again, there was fierce determination. How much? She asked, her voice controlled. $3 million initially, said he could negotiate for more. A dry, humorless laugh escaped Victoria's lips. At least he valued you reasonably well, she remarked with bitter irony. Last time he only offered $1 million to the guy I dated in college. Ryan blinked, surprised. This has happened before? Victoria nodded, gesturing to a nearby bench where they both sat. Robert has always been protective in his own twisted way, she explained. When our parents were alive, his interference was subtler. After they passed, he took it upon himself to protect the family's interests, even though he chose to live in Europe and barely participates in the business. She rested a protective hand on the small bump just beginning to show. But this is different. This isn't just about me or the company. It's about our son, and I won't let my brother interfere with that. Ryan covered her hand with his. What can we expect now? He seemed pretty determined. Victoria sighed, looking momentarily weary. I know my brother. He doesn't give up easily. He'll probably try other angles. Dig into your past for anything he can use against you. Maybe even influence some board members. Could he pull that off? Possibly. Robert has always cultivated strategic alliances, even from a distance. She squeezed Ryan's hand. But don't worry. I have more support on the board than he does. And more importantly, I have the truth on my side. I've built this company over the last 10 years while he's been content collecting dividends. That counts for a lot. Ryan felt a wave of admiration for this woman who, even faced with family betrayal, maintained her dignity and strength. What should we do? Victoria thought for a moment before answering. Nothing defensive. We'll keep going exactly as we were, working, building our life together, preparing for this baby. But we'll also take some precautions. She stood, naturally assuming the posture of someone accustomed to handling crises. Tomorrow, I'll speak with my personal lawyers to update my will and ensure extra protections for you and the baby, no matter what happens. I'll also alert some key allies on the board about Robert's possible interference. Ryan stood too, feeling both impressed and slightly out of place. It was in moments like these that the difference in their worlds became most obvious. Victoria, you don't have to worry about protecting me financially. I'm not with you for that. She turned to him, her expression softening. I know that, Ryan. That's exactly why I want to ensure your security. Not because you asked, but because you deserve it. She gently touched his face. You're the father of my child, the man I love. And no one, not even my own brother, will threaten that. At that moment, seeing the determination in her eyes, Ryan fully understood why Victoria Harrison had become one of the most respected executives in the country, and he felt immense gratitude to have this extraordinary strength on his side, not against him. What neither of them knew was that while they talked in the sheltered garden of the estate, Robert Harrison was in his hotel room, on the phone with someone from Ryan's past, someone whose presence could shake the foundations of the new life they were building. So, can we come to an agreement? Robert asked, a calculated smile on his lips as he jotted notes on an elegant notepad. Excellent. Book your ticket to New York City. All expenses will be covered, of course. Hanging up, he gazed at the New York skyline from his luxury suite window. Sorry, Victoria, he murmured to himself, but it's for your own good. End of story. Dear listeners, what did you think of this corporate romance full of twists? A powerful woman, a talented architect, and a love that overcame all social barriers. Leave a like, comment what you would do in Victoria's place, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories like this one.